Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank Podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. And we are actually recording this during pre-release weekend. So some crazy stuff has happened as it relates to Tarkir Dragonstorm. We had the streamer event this past week, and obviously the whole set's been spoiled, which I don't believe was the case when we last recorded. So I want to chat with these fine gentlemen about our feelings about Dragonstorm now that it's upon us, and talk about our experience in the streamer event as well as pre-release. So, my name is Graham, go by Hamax42, and I'm joined by two lovely gentlemen. First up, we have Astralsflame. Astros, how we doing, man? Welcome back.
Doing good. What's going on? How you doing, Ham?
Living the dream, man. And glad to get you back on the podcast so soon. I know you're going to definitely be part of the crew moving forward, so thank you. Oh my goodness, love it.
Happy to be here.
And then, of course, we have the one and only Carlo, aka C_Jr. How we doing, man? Welcome.
Oh, I'm doing great. I was out playing pre-releases on Friday over at my LGS, and all the pre-release events at my LGS have been sold out.
Nice.
So it's nice to see a bunch of players that have been coming out and slamming some new dragons on the board. That was great to see, and so I'm excited to talk about that today.
That rules. So I guess right off the bat, I just want to kind of say the thing. It feels like Magic's back, which is kind of funny because it never really went anywhere. But I don't know. It reminds me of the feeling that I got at Foundations, like in the Foundations pre-release. This feeling of like, oh, this is just Magic being Magic, and it's awesome because Magic is awesome. And I'm getting that same feeling here, except now there are more dragons and more dragon-themed stuff, which is also awesome. So I don't know. Is that the same thing that you guys are feeling, or is there? I mean, that's just the bottom line, right? Am I crazy?
Well, I think you see it because Tarkir was such a beloved plane in the past. I don't want to say that it's the same thing as Ravnica, right? And we've returned to Ravnica God knows how many times now, because people just like the Ravnica aesthetic. They love the guilds in the same way that I think Magic players like wedges and or shards, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we had a whole Tarkir block before, 3 sets on Tarkir in a row, and folks fell in love with the clans and the storyline behind them and everything like that. And so, I've seen some folks who I've not seen out at Magic events before this weekend. I've seen folks who haven't been there in a while, like they were players who used to play a lot, didn't play so much, saw Talkir, and they're like, let me show up to the pre-release and pick my favorite clan to play with. So yeah, I would say it definitely gives that vibe. Folks want to play with characters they used to play before, right? Whether that's Surrak or wanting to play with Narset and folks of the Jeskai clan. So there was definitely that element and that feel to Tarkir being back.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Like the essence of, I think, what heralds a Magic set was captured in this. Like every set we've had from, I'd say in the last 2 years, there have been great sets. There have been what we refer to as top hat sets. There have been, the mentions of Universes Beyond coming. Every set is unique and has its own flavor. And I'll say in the last 1.5 to 2 years, they've done a great feeling in bringing every Magic set to have a great essence to itself. Ixalan, out of the park, great flavor, cool cards, awesome feeling. Aether Drift, is wild and different as it was. Really cool effect. I mean, the race cars were a unique touch, and I dug it. But like Tarkir is an essence. That is just something, we haven't been there in a while. Things have changed. It was like going back to Kamigawa again. It had that kind of feeling to me. Just that essence of coming back in.
Yes.
And I think, too, it's the same thing. It seems that players seem to prefer a set that takes place on one particular plane. That way you get to explore the plane the most, right? And I'm not saying that I disliked Aether Drift. I particularly like the race car theme and the death race and going through multiple planes and visiting planes that we hadn't necessarily seen before, like in terms of Murugunda. But there wasn't really a story in essence that captured the themes of one particular plane. It was kind of like a story wrap up of what happened on Amonkhet and what was new. A story of, what has happened on Avishkar and what's new. And then entering Murugunda, here are dinos and vampires. And so Tarkir, you got to visit both old school Tarkir, understand what happened in the interim of what Sarkhan did with like the time shifting and how it's come back to old school Tarkir. And hey, Ugin and Nikobolas are back, so we'll find out what happens with them at a later date. So like, I think Magic players were interested in all of that, and dragons are just generally popular. And I've probably said this on a couple podcast episodes now. Getting Commander players to show up at the pre-release and then wanting to get into playing Standard, dragons really help you do that, because Commander players love their dragons. And so getting to play with new legendary dragons is great. Letting them pick up legendary dragons that they can put into their current existing Commander decks. Plus, they can play with them in Standard. So it really is molding both the old player, folks who don't traditionally play formats like Standard, and newer players to get into the groove too. And I think you just see that with any set that is one plane specific, like Duskmourn, right? Duskmourn was a really powerful Magic set in terms of power level for Standard, and it focused on one plane. Yeah, you had elements of folks traveling to Duskmourn via Omen Paths, but the set took place there, on that plane. Whereas we went to Aether Drift, and again, that shifting of 3 different planes, and unified kind of behind one theme, but not really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that same is true for any one plane. And that is, in my opinion, what Magic is going to need going forward, because the next in-universe set we get is Edge of Eternities, which has older Magic characters in it, but this space theme behind it that we've not experienced before. And the artwork is drastically different than other Magic sets that we've seen. So it's interesting how that's going to go with everything.
Indeed. With Edge of Eternities, I'm kind of hopeful, because everything we've seen so far looks like Magic does space, not just space. Oh, and by the way, it's in Magic, you know? And so I think I'm intrigued by it, and I'm hopeful. And on top of that, we know Tezzeret's going to be there, and now we know that Nicol Bolas has been, has busted free. So is he going to show up there? I'm definitely curious. But it's funny you mentioned the notion of this set appealing to Commander players. The number of legends in this set seems relatively high, but it also doesn't feel like it's forced. I'm thinking back to Thunder Junction. Like every legendary character was there in a cowboy hat just cuz, and it definitely felt odd and forced. Whereas here with Tarkir, by the way the plane has been designed, we have 2 different 3-color legends in the clan leaders and the spirit dragons. Like, we have 10 3-color legends in the main set. Like, that definitely feels like something that is trying to, bait Commander players, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels earned. It feels like it fits, and it works, and on top of that, the designs, I think, for the most part, look like they're kind of designed with 60 card in mind, in addition to being able to function in Commander, which is just, I don't know. I feel like they just got it right. Like, this is what, that's what, when Magic is done right, everybody gets a little bit of something that they want, and it doesn't feel like anyone's being pandered to. And I think that's what I'm feeling with this, is everybody just has something to love about this set. Yeah. And I think that's great.
Yeah, there's definitely something to pull from. I feel like, in essence, to me, it feels like they pulled a bit from Strixhaven on that aspect, right? Because in Strixhaven, we had that same kind of methodology. It was 2 colors instead of 3, but each color had 2 legendaries. The modal flips being one, and then the Elder Dragons as another. And to that kind of essence, it feels like they did a bit of a learning with that. I don't know if they actually did, but that's how it appears. There was a balanced set amount of legendaries. We're not oversaturated. We're not undersaturated.
Yeah,
I still have complaints about the 1 mana 1/1 that's got 3 different keywords, but
you know what? Let's start there. So let's talk about a couple of the other designs. So we've talked a lot about spoilers in the last few weeks, because of course, but yeah. So Astros, you got some feelings on a Dragon Sniper?
Yeah, I don't like this.
Yeah. I love the fact that they just represented everyone's first Skyrim character on a Magic card. I kind of love that. Yeah, it's 1/1
Sure.
for 1 green, Vigilance, Reach, Death Touch, Human, Archer. I mean, mine was a Wood Elf, but whatever, it's fine. But yeah, it's just
Vigilance would have been fine. Reach would have been fine. Death Touch would have been fine. Why?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be all 3 on a 1-drop?
the 1/1 for 1 with Death Touch is a tried and true like staple. We have Moss Viper and and freaking Ankle Biter even from OTJ recently. Like there's we've seen so many different variants of it, and the fact that this one just blows all of them out of the water immediately. The question that I have is this going to be the new gold standard, or is this going to be like the chase, uncommon for Finn the Fangbearer decks forever? Are we going to see more of these moving forward, or are we going to go back to just 1/1 for 1 with Death Touch as though that's normal?
I don't know. I kind of think that it is sort of like you said, like the ankle biter of the set that also for many reasons, because there are tons of flying creatures in this particular, sealed format, that you need to be able to hit a dragon, right? You can't just have like random 3/4 flying ward 5 or whatever the heck the uncommon is. That is just out here and not being able to be taken down by a green spell because, and I'm sure that, Headology, for example, probably said something along these lines and or is thinking it and will say it later, right? Like a lot of the green spells in this set, like there is a destroy target creature with flying spell for 2 mana. There is a not a fight, but a bite card, like multiple bite cards in this format that are green in nature. None of them hit these dragons that have ward, and there are multiple like uncommon dragons and or rare dragons with ward of some kind. And so having this particular creature in the possibility for you to play in Temur, in Abzan, to end Sultai to fight against those dragons, I think is necessary. Because generally, some of those colors might not have as strong removal spells in the limited format. So yeah, that's sort of
fair
my
enough, I suppose. Okay. So Death Touch Reach makes amazing sense in that regard. Was the Vigilance strictly necessary?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you just from my pre-release experience yesterday is even though a lot of players got this card, it didn't even seem as though it was played. And that might just be indicative of a card that might be stronger in a draft scenario than it is in a sealed scenario. I also found this format to be quite slow, which enables you to play your big drops without worrying if you're going to lose the game quick. With the exception of the Mardu clan, because those cards are very fast. Mobilize is very real. So, tapping a creature to put multiple... I think there's a 4-mana uncommon that's like Mobilize 2. I forget its name, but it's very strong. It's like 1 in Mardu. It's a 4/4 with Mobilize. And that card is very hard to kill. There's only a few removal spells that actually like hit it. And so it's cards like that, particularly in Mardu, that are faster than everything else in the format. But the sealed format seemed very slow.
Bone Karen Butcher? Is that the one?
The
4/4 demon. Yeah, mobilize 2 attacking tokens. You control have Death Touch. Brutal. Yeah, that's
There was actually a callback in this card, because if you look at the skull that's on the top of the pile, it's actually a demon from the previous Tarkir set. There was it's one of the rare demons from like there was a Rakdos coloring.
Oh, Butcher of Truth.
Yeah, Butcher of Truth. That was it. So that's the Butcher of Truth's head skull on top beside it.
Oh, I need to pull that up, but my cat has decided to block my keyboard. So sorry about that, everybody. All right. Butcher of Truth. The only one I'm getting is Kozilek. I assume that's not what you mean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe Butcher of the Horde.
Okay.
Might be Butcher of the Horde.
Butcher of the Horde.
It's definitely Butcher
yes, there
something.
it is. Yeah, Butcher of the Horde. That's the one.
Yes.
Yep. Well, and 5/4 for 1 to Mardu with flying, sacrifice of the creature, aids your choice of vigilance. So those two, they're both butchers in Mardu, same mana cost. Okay, that's a fun callback. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very cool. That's a good eye. I had not noticed that.
Yeah, I saw someone posted about it on Twitter actually, because there was a bunch of cards. I think there's a series of between 5 to 10 cards. Each has like a callback to some other older Tarkir card from the last set after Fate Reforged.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that kind of story embedded in them, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, and it's because that's the kind of detail that I never would have noticed, but at the same time, as a casual observer, this whole set just feels like Tarkir, and those little details, like we kind of unconsciously pick up on that stuff, and that carries through. So yeah, that rules. But yeah, so we have a limited environment right here where the Mardu deck is aggressive and fast, and everything else is relatively slow. That sounds perfect. Like that sounds like they hit it right on the head.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. So, like at the pre-release, you got to pick clan-specific pre-release kits. So they've had that traditionally in the past. Like they definitely had it for Ravnica, right, where you picked your guild, and that means you got one seeded pack. And in that seeded pack, you would have a promo that's stamped of anything, right? Didn't have to be with your particular clan. But then you were guaranteed to hit a certain coalition of rares or mythics. I think there was like 9 different possibilities that you could hit that you would get. I got Dragonback Assault, of course, when I picked Teamer. And Severance Priest, I think, when I picked Abzan. And then you were guaranteed to hit the uncommon tri-land, right? So like Frontier Bivouac, Mystic Monastery, etc. And then you got a guaranteed uncommon. Mine and Teamer was the Mammoth card, 5 mana, create a 5/5 elephant, and then it harmonizes for 8. Which essentially recasts itself the next turn, because you tap your 5/5 and then you pay Tamer and you get another 5/5 elephant.
Seems good.
Which is a really, really cool mechanic, in my opinion, the harmonize thing. Or you could just pay 8 for it to flash it back. You don't even have to tap the creature. But you got those, and then you got random cards that were associated with your clan. And I think you were also guaranteed one of the gain life lands. So like red, blue, green, blue, etc. And then you got 5 booster packs normally. And then you would build your deck. And I really think they did a great job with the seeded packs. Because your base of what your deck would be essentially was there, and then you got any additional supportive cards from the general packs you'd open. And because this is a tricolor set, it was very easy to splash a 4th color or a 5th color if you wanted, because every pack had a gain life land in it that probably connected to your clan's colors somewhere, unless you were unlucky and opened Scoured Barons and a Teamer kit.
Sure.
But they all really worked well together. And you could see that generally, even if you lost the game, you were having fun because you got to cast your tricolor spells very easily. So I'm excited to see what the draft format, like how that will be different, because you aren't just guaranteed those lands, right? You're not guaranteed to hit all the Teamer cards that you want. And it might be a little bit different this go around. Somebody might be drafting Teamer, but then wants to splash that 4th color, so they take your like multicolor spell that goes with your particular clan because they've got 2 out of 3 of the colors to start. So I assume that the draft environment will be very fun, because it traditionally is with these types of sets. So I'm excited to try that on Tuesday when it releases on Arena.
Heck yeah. So, Astros, did you get a chance to do pre-release or any of that action, or no? I'll admit I did not get to a pre-release this weekend, so I definitely missed out, because I'm sure, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, sadly not. I didn't get to do pre-release either. I did buy a pre-release kit for at home, so I got to open some packs, and I got the Teamer Commander Precon.
Excellent.
Which, amazing. Loved it. And my packs, were all right, but I did at least get to open some pre-release stuff. And like Carlos said, the seeded packs, 10 out of 10. Like, yeah.
And I did get a pre-release kit as well, and I got the Abzan one, which apparently it's pronounced Abzan, not Abzan. I don't. In any event,
Abzan.
Abzan. Apparently that is the proper way to do it. Yeah. I know that threw me for a loop almost as much as when I found out it's actually Garruk. Like, what? Really? Anyway, but yeah. Yeah, so I got the Abzan pack. My A's are all flattening out on me. Anyway, so I got the Abzan pack, and I noticed with the seeded pack as well, I definitely felt like nudged in that direction. And given that it is a 3-color environment, I think that's really important, because it would be very easy if that seeded pack wasn't there to end up with just kind of a pile of like 4-color stuff, like hopefully good stuff, but like maybe not. It'd be very easy to go 4 or 5 color given how many 3-color uncommons there are, for example. And I think the use of the like hybrid mana situation, the two generic or a color, is clever and definitely opens up a lot of space where all of a sudden splash has become significantly more reasonable. I don't know. It reads like in looking through the pack, I remember thinking like, okay, this could easily like nudge me enough into the direction that I could build the clan I want. But if I get some kind of insane Jeskai rare, well, okay, then I can lean into that as well. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good stuff. I feel like a 3-color set, it cannot be easy to design. Like, I can imagine trying to make a functional limited environment with 3-color clans. That's got to be something of a nightmare, right? And this feels like they hit all the right elements. And I think the seeded packs are a part of that.
Yeah. And also at the same time, there's a whole lot of different fixing opportunities in this set, right? You have the monuments that are only 2 mana in each of the colors, right? So, 2 mana to go ahead and search for one of the basic lands. And then there's also the Dragon Orb that's like 3 colorless, and that lets you tap for a mana of any color, but also grows your dragons because they get a +1/+1 counter when they enter. So, those cheap-ish dragons that you can play at common or uncommon in limited just get bigger. And there it is, the Dragonstorm Globe. Thank you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the good common and uncommon dragons have pretty sweet omens attached to them that matter. I mean, there's forgive me, I'm not going to remember their names, but there is one that's like a 4 mana and a green dragon that also is 2 mana, like 1 and a black to destroy a creature of power 2 or less. So for 2 mana, there you go, Disruptive Stormbrood.
Oh yeah.
And so you pay 2, you blow up a cheap creature, you shuffle this card back in your deck, and then you can either replay it for that removal spell or simply as a 5 mana 3/3 flyer. Now imagine you have that globe, right? So later on, it's going to let you, so you can cast your removal spell on 2, play your globe on 3, and if you redraw this guy, play it on 4 and blow up one of your opponent's artifacts or enchantments. It's just good limited gameplay with very easy fixing. And it allows you to, like, let's say you're just playing, let's say you don't even have green, right? And you are Mardu. It is not out of the ordinary for you to just play this card as the 2 mana removal spell that shuffles itself back in the deck. And if you happen to draw something that generates you a treasure token, or you have that globe, or a gain life land that you can splash that casts this as a creature later, right? Instead of playing a swamp, you play Jungle Hollow in your Jeskai deck, or not Jeskai deck, in your Mardu deck. Bam, you can cast this card no problem. And I think it means that the omens were very well designed, and the mana fixing was very well designed on all of these cards.
Yes. Yep. Completely agreed. I love all of that. And yeah, the omens definitely create the easiest, one of the easiest splashes of all time there. Yeah, fantastic. Honestly, if there was Petty Revenge, the omen on this, if there was a sorcery in the set that was destroy target creature with power 3 or less and then shuffle it back in the deck, that already seems like playable limited removal to me. And the fact that there's a bonus dragon on top of that's a flying Rex Sage. I mean, yeah, okay. That seems good. Yeah, awesome stuff.
The omen mechanic, I think, was really well done. Like, I've seen some people say, oh, it's not as strong as Adventure. Like, in certain circumstances, I agree because it doesn't go to exile, but also, like, this going back in your deck means it's repeatable. The Adventures aren't repeatable. Omens are. So if you're playing in the right shell, going through your deck or finding specific things, like, that's pretty beneficial.
Absolutely. I mean, you could be running 2 of these in your deck and you can still hit it like 3 or 4 times, some like naturally, and that's not crazy. And in a limited environment, 40 card deck, the chances of you drawing this a second time, even if you only have one, I mean, it's not bad. So
No, it's not at
yeah.
all.
Yeah, and it's great. Like the black dragon, I think it's called Scavenger Regent.
Oh my goodness, that thing.
one's
It's
so
the
good.
rare that has exude toxin on it. It's like double black and X, and then it gives each non-dragon -6/-X. It lets you cast this for cheap, like for 4 to give -2/- to the board. Reshuffles in your deck, and then you can cast it later for like -4, -5, -6 when you have a lot of mana out. Just the repeatable wrath effect of this card is, in my opinion, this is standard playable.
I agree.
But in limited, it's actually insane. And the ward is discard a card on this. So like late game, when you cast this after wrathing your opponent multiple times, and you're going to this moment in the game where you have no cards in hand and you're in top deck mode, the dragon's almost unkillable.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, and I went up against a couple folks playing kind of like mid-range kind of control shells during the streamer event, and I got by this a couple of times because you're trying to go wide or trying to be aggressive, and there was one match where I got hit by this 3 separate times. I genuinely don't know how many were in the deck. Like it might have only been 2. It was nuts. And it hurt every time. Yeah. So yeah, this thing, I think you're right. I think this could be standard playable in those more, especially if we can get to a point where things kind of slow down a little bit and we can get more to a mid-range game plan. This is going to be awesome. And these kinds of inexpensive sweepers, inexpensive removal spells are going to be important to help us get there. So we'll see. But yeah, how common are dragons going to be? That's the question. The fact that it only hits non-dragons. If dragons aren't a popular archetype after this in standard, which I know some people are still going to be playing them because, of course, but
obviously,
I mean, yeah, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. If that can actually consistently hit your opponent's board, and if you have if you're ramping with this, that could be backbreaking and potentially asymmetrical. Which, yikes. Yeah, good stuff.
Remember, you don't have to play creatures to ramp anymore.
It's true.
Got old Overlord of the Hauntwoods that probably doesn't care about this card, right? Like
sure doesn't. Yeah.
But actually, though, like that means turn 4, you'd have access to 5 mana. That's a swipe, like a sweeper for 3. It's not bad. That can kill an aggro deck decently on board.
Yeah.
It also deals with Screaming Nemesis pretty well.
Yeah. If it hasn't been pumped in any way, yeah, that would be fantastic. And of course, because of that shell that we're talking about, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention X = 3 does trigger up the Beanstalk. So, there's that.
Excuse me.
just saying. Of note, the dragon itself is a 4-drop, so it does not. So that is, it's not perfect. It's so funny. If this cost 1 more, I would say it's even better in our current environment, which is so funny to me. But yeah, so this is a good one. And there was another. So I played with a lot of the Omen Dragons during the early access. I thought they were just a ton of fun, and I built a couple of decks that featured them very heavily. And one that I think is interesting, at the very least as a sideboard option in Standard, is the Rune Scale Stormbrood. This is the Is It one. It is a 2/4 flyer for 4. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell or a dragon spell, it gets +2/+0 till end of turn. So it's kind of like that, like super prowess from the Slickshot Show-Off. But I honestly don't think that's what matters. Like, yeah, it can produce some power late game. Good, that's never a bad thing to have. But it's Omen. Chilling Screech is an instant for 1 and a blue. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. In some matchups, I mean, that hits most things that your opponent, against the red deck, that hits basically everything but Screaming Nemesis. And it's a hard counter, so it can be creatures, it can be
it also hits up the Beanstalk if you're on the play.
You're not wrong. Yeah, on the play against Beanstalk, this is awesome. Yeah, it's true. So
I gotta agree. I was surprised by this card, actually. I had a chance during the pre-release. I tried out a deck with it, and suffice to say, like you said, Ham, the instant speed counter is what I think comes in prevalence, but it's repeatable. Shuffles back in, hits a lot of things. This is actually impactful, and something you can just toss on the sideboard. Like, okay, I've used the counter spell, shuffles back in. You're playing a control deck or some variant with blue. You're going to be drawing in. You're more than likely going to have an access to this counter spell over and over again. And hitting beans alone, I think, is good enough. I'll be honest.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if some kind of, I mean, this looks to me like something that might be able to help an is it tempo situation at some. I don't know if I don't know what that looks like, but the notion of it being a cheap hard counter in the early game that may be relevant in the late game against some matchups, and then also just being a threat that you might draw late in the game when you need one. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the design on this. I love it so much. Yeah. And we see that with a lot of the omens, like 2-mana interaction. A lot of them are, sorcery speed removal that maybe isn't great, and then the body is also like the dragon is also maybe a little understated for its cost, but you get them both. And in the case of omens, you might genuinely get them both or the omen multiple times, even whatever you need. I love the design on these. I think they're absolutely fantastic, and they also work really well with another card that I know I was playing during the the streamer event, which was the Breaching Dragonstorm. I know I'm pretty sure I've talked about it already on the show, but it works really well with the omens because the omens guarantee that you don't really have any bad hits with it, because all your cheap spells are also dragons that reset it.
Yeah,
so it's like, all right, cool.
Speaking of this particular card, Breaching Dragonstorm, I ran into a lot of players playing this with Invasion of Alara. And it was if you remember a couple standard rotations ago, Invasion of Alara with Fetch Quest, it was that same deck, but also with this as a way to hit Fetch Quest out of your deck.
Yep. Because
yes, definitely, yeah.
Because Cascade and Discover, whenever they go there's always a way to break it. There just is. Yep. Yeah, I saw a lot of people doing that, and it definitely got to the point where with some of those decks, I mean, they basically do nothing for like 3 turns, 3 or 4 turns, and then hit this, and then just win because they vomit like 60 mana worth of stuff onto the battlefield. It's like, well, all right, I guess that's that. And to be fair, I was playing a deck with this and Dracogenesis, which is far more fair and not quite as good, but when it hit Dracogenesis, I could combo off because Beanstalk was refilling my hand. And it's just, if I got lucky, and during the streamer event, I got lucky a lot. So if you go back to my VOD, it happened far more often than it should. So like, don't take that. Your mileage may vary. Like, be careful with your wild cards, everybody. But yeah. It's Breaching Dragonstorm is a fun card, but it's not. Yeah. It's not like it's not fair. I'm gonna say that it's either gonna be, if it is good in standard, it's probably gonna eat a ban because what it's doing is like not okay. But I don't think it is. I don't think it's gonna be competitive. Yeah. But it's very fun if you want to watch some explosive stuff happening. That's a cool card to do it. So in your guys' experience, when you were playing standard during the streamer event, what other cards did you lock onto that worked well for you? Or against you?
I mean, we said we were going to talk about Dragonback Assault.
Yeah,
that's definitely a big one.
That card is incredible. And you might not think about it because you're like, 6 mana to deal 3 to each creature and Walker is kind of like not great. But let me tell you, like, folks are playing different Roots variants. This card destroyed those decks because it also kills Tyvar.
Yes.
It is a wrath spell for, against the mono red deck, assuming you're playing other removal to help deal with those cards. This does board wipe them for the most part. It also says landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you make a 4/4 dragon creature token with flying. So I was playing a Temur Doppelgang deck because, of course, I was. And we were utilizing, obviously, Up the Beanstalk and Overlord of the Hauntwoods, because why wouldn't you? But also was trying out the new green dragon that...
Regent.
Yeah, the Regent that lets you pay 2 and a green, and it cultivates you for forests, right? It lets you put 1 on the battlefield tapped, and then the other one in your hand. So, Bloomvine Regent, yes. And otherwise, it says when it enters or another dragon you control enters, gain 3. And it's a solid 4/5 flyer for 5 mana. So in the early turns, you can cast this for 3. So what this allows you to do is have Overlord of the Hauntwoods, Ancient Cornucopia, and Bloomvine Regent as 3 mana ramp spells, right? So play whatever number of those that you want, but you probably want 4 Overlord of the Hauntwoods, right? Some number of Ancient Cornucopia, and maybe like 3 Bloomvine Regents. I was playing 6 basic forests in the deck because of this card, but the mana was never a problem because Overlord of the Hauntwoods makes you an everywhere token. Cornucopia taps for mana of any color, so you should have no mana issues. And so the reason why this card in particular matters with Dragonback Assault is because it puts a land on the battlefield tapped. So if you have a Dragonback Assault out on the battlefield, this will ramp you, triggering the landfall. So pair all of this stuff with Doppelgang, right? Because if you are able to ramp up to a huge Doppelgang, let's say 3, because I would say 3 is pretty huge for that card, and you copy Dragonback Assault, and you copy a bunch of dragons, you're having a good time. Or even if you just copy Dragonback Assault and 2 creature lands, like Restless Vinestalk, you actually get to deal the 3 damage 3 times before it generates your lands, or before you generate your, some other stuff that might give you creature tokens. So your dragon creatures that are created off landfall don't die to Dragonback Assault, because you can stack the triggers or the board wipes before you get the creatures. I was also trying some crazy stuff in the same deck with the Storm Scale Scion. So being able to play like Beans into Overlord late game helps enable Storm for you. And baby, when you Doppelgang Storm Scale Scion, and you get to pump them all, your dragons are probably winning the game in the next crackback, unless your opponent has a Sunfall or some type of a Wrath spell. And I didn't think I was going to play the Storm Scale Scion, but it turns out when you pay 5 mana and you've Doppelganged enough, you have enough mana to where you can cast that thing for full Monty on 6 and generate yourself 3 of those dragons. So it was a very fun Temur ramp build that let me do exactly this. I was playing extra dragons in the deck, though. I was playing Magmatic Dragon on 4 mana, the 4/5 that blows up a non-basic of your opponents. And it lets them search for a basic land, but it puts into play with a stun counter on it. So it actually sets your opponent back a turn. It doesn't just LD their non-basic. It sets them back a mana source for a turn. This card is very strong.
Agreed.
So if you Doppelgang this thing, and you blow up 3 of your opponent's lands with a Doppelgang on X, you set them back for 3 turns, and now you have 4/4/5s with flying. So there you go.
That locks them out, right? I mean, for a turn, and what can they do?
And that's if you're playing a deck that plays basic lands, right? If you're playing against Pixie, they lose because they only play like maybe 1 or 2 basic lands in their deck.
Yeah.
So you could blow up their whole mana base literally blow up their whole mana base with the Magmatic Hellkite Doppelgang.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, I love the stun counter addition to these because I know there wasn't really anything between, a complete, Stone Rain or the Field of Ruin, and this is kind of a fun middle ground where you are getting a tempo benefit, but they're not gone forever. I think that's clever. I like that. And yeah, I say that now. Just you tune into my stream later this week after this comes live on Arena. I'll be complaining about this card, don't worry. But for now, I love the design. I think it's very cool.
I was gonna say 2 weeks later, it's when Deep Cavern Bats. Man, this game has had my opponents had 3 Deep Cavern Bats. Hemlocks 2 weeks later. My opponents had 3 Magmatic Hellkites. I'm out of basics on my deck. They're tapped in again.
I've got 5 basics. I drew 3 of them, and what am I supposed to do?
Listen, Arena Ladder, I apologize in advance, but you will experience this from me for at least the next week.
And it's fun. I did get the privilege of getting paired against that deck, and I remember thinking, I was doing the Doppelgang thing. Okay, it's a good thing. I know Carlo knows how to do this. Where's the twist? Where are the new cards? And then sure enough, Dragonback Assault showed up. Bought him a turn by sweeping my board, and then I think it was an X=3 on this. And it was, I think you were X=3 on this and then Overlord of the Hauntwoods or something. It was just my goodness. What am I supposed to do here? It was brutal,
Scoop
man.
Is the answer. But
I on the ladder, that will be the response. But yeah, in the streamer event, it was all right, now bring them in. Let me see. Yeah. So what's the high score? It's it's very cool. And this card, when I first read it, I remember thinking it's a mythic. It is 6 mana for Brotherhood's End across 3 colors. In what world do I want that? But actually seeing it in play, my goodness, in that ramp world, in the when you're ramping is when you want.
And
this.
It incredibly works well, like I said, with Ancient Cornucopia, because I can cast this card and gain 3 life. And if you have multiple Cornucopias out, it should enable that tempo against the aggressive decks, regain that life back.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's really well done. Yeah. and just more landfall. People love landfall. Yeah.
Yeah. We
Good stuff.
need land stacks and standards again. That's the bottom line. We need land stacks.
You know, I don't hate that. And I think, I mean, we're at a point where, I don't know, that the various, you know, Bant or Teamer Beans decks, some of them have been a little more landfall-y than others, and it's interesting. There's something there. Honestly, I think right now, with Overlord of the Hauntwoods and Beanstalk and all that, the opportunity to do ramp into big silly stuff is here, and I'm seeing people do that, and I appreciate it. You know, like, I'm not a huge fan of the Beans Overlord package, to the point where, well, actually, you know what? We actually had there was a ban and restrict announcement as well, which I suppose has happened since we've met last, so we could touch on that. If you're looking for an alternative marketplace online for Magic the Gathering singles and sealed products, I have great news for you. MagicJank.com is an online marketplace for people who love all Magic the Gathering has to offer, even the jankier bits. Join the MagicJank marketplace with your own storefront. Whether you're a small business or a hobbyist with more bulk lying around than you'd like, MagicJank.com can help your products reach new customers who love the game as much as you do. Now let's get back to the episode. But there was some conversation about whether or not Up the Beanstalk, you know, was worthy of a ban, and people have gone back and forth on that. And I personally would have liked to see a ban, but I don't. You know, it is what it is, and I'm not like super upset about the fact that it didn't, because of the amount of just big silly nonsense that we can do now because of it, the amount of card advantage that it gives. But I gotta be honest, if you're actually spending 6 mana on your spells, it doesn't feel so bad. You know? I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? I'm kind of all over the place here. Sorry.
No, like, agreed. Like, I'm of the same opinion. I would have liked to have seen Beans banned. I mean, I'm in the same boat for Monstrous Rage or Manifold Mouse. I think Standard is great where it is. Could have been a lot better. We're not in a bad Standard, but we could be in an even better. But, you know, Beans is still here. We get to take advantage of it, and Dragonback Assault in a Beans package, paying 6 mana to draw a card, doesn't feel bad to me. It's card replenishment. Seems fine to me. Yeah.
I don't even think we're on the cusp yet of, like, I don't think the streamer event highlighted what you could do with the cards that there was no action taken against, because remember, in the streamer event, we are encouraged to play with at least 10 new cards from the set in our deck, right? So we might not be playing the most optimal Standard builds. Although you did see some folks that literally were playing mono red with Monstrous Rage and no new cards, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Hey man, Wild Ride's a new card. All right, like, that's
sure. I guess
it is.
I went up against that deck a couple of times where it was just the mouse deck plus Wild Ride, and it's like, did you really need to test that? Like, I feel like, anyway,
you know, and so I envision, like, all of your hybrid spells work really well with the Up the Beanstalk, and I don't think we got to see any decks, nor did I play any decks with them. A card I definitely want to play alongside Up the Beanstalk is Rakshas's Bargain. That is the hybrid soul tie card that basically lets you look at 4 cards, select 2. And the other one that you showed earlier, Ham, was the Kintry card, the Abzon.
Yeah, Kintry Severance. Yeah.
Yeah, Kintry Severance, which is a removal spell for 3 mana, essentially, if you were playing that color combination, and also triggers Up the Beanstalk. So now you give the Domain deck, even though they're not as good as Ride's End, it does give you additional exile effects or dig effects in that already existing Domain deck. Whereas Domain doesn't... You can play Stock Up in Domain, but I think Rakshas's Bargain is 10 times better considering Beans, right? And that deck is already Beans overlording. So giving you the ability with 5 mana up then in the Domain deck, if you've already got Beans established, to play both Ride's End plus Bargain in the same turn is very strong. I don't know if the Domain deck's going to do that. I'm sure as hell going to try it. Because it makes sense for me to untap with 5 mana up, play 2 spells, draw 2 cards, exile, plus get 2 more cards in my hand. But we'll see if that's too slow. It shouldn't be too slow when you've got Overlord plus Zur that gains you 7 life when you attack with that thing. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, and actually, what you're talking about there does remind me of one deck that I did see on the during the streamer event. So shout out to Ali Eldrazi actually, who did bring a Sultai control deck, which I got to be honest was frustrating to play against because he had that thing locked in, and it was using a lot of these same cards, but it had. Well, in my match, he managed to stick 2 Ancient Cornucopias, and so the amount of life that he was gaining off of this stuff was insane. But it was necessary because he was running Teval in it, the Delve Dragon. And so all of a sudden, like a lot of these, so like I think at one point he actually like cast Rakshas's Bargain for no mana, but delved 6 off of it, like took 6 to the face. So like but gained 6 backs off of the 2 cornucopias. It was like the synergies were very powerful and it felt tough to kind of keep up with. Come to think of it, I don't even remember if he had Beanstalk in there, but like, you can. And that was one where the new cards were definitely were taking center stage in a way that was pretty impressive. So I think there's something there, like the value and the synergy that you're talking about. 100%. It's absolutely here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, those are some things that I'm interested to try out on the ladder. Forgetting like, and again, sort of on the ban talk, Not that I am the opinion. I was of the opinion that nothing needed to get banned in Standard because I think Standard's quite healthy, and I do understand that there are cards that are unfavorable to want to play against, especially since we do so often on Arena, right? And I probably have mentioned this before, because we play more and more games on Arena than we do in Paper Magic. It seems like we play against that stuff all the time, which is also completely fine. But I understand the annoyance of the cards. I didn't want anything particularly banned in Standard because I think if you got to ban something, it means you have like an unhealthy format. And that might be a very valid opinion for some. Though I wouldn't have been upset had they done anything against uncommons. I have a problem when you do that with like rares and mythics that are a lot of money that people invest in, right? Like you're not spending a bunch of money to invest in cards because Beans is good or because Monstrous Rage is good, or because this town ain't big enough is good. Sure, this town being big enough probably made Storm Chaser's Talent a $20 card at the time. So that might not exist anymore if you spent $20 a piece on Storm Chaser's Talent. But like your other cards aren't really going down in price, right? Like your Overlords are still very powerful regardless of Beans. Your red cards are relatively not ever expensive except for Screaming Nemesis, which doesn't care if Monstrous Rage gets banned or not. So as long as it's not really affecting somebody's wallet, and that matters for Standard, right? Because if you want newer players to get into Standard, they don't want to invest in a deck that they can no longer play. That makes people not want to play anymore. That matters less in an environment like Modern or Legacy or Commander, because there are so many cards in those formats, right? One card gets hit, it's not destroying your deck, unless unfortunately you're an Underworld Breach player in Modern. In that case, I don't feel sorry for you. Your Mox Opals still have their value. Listen, your Underworld Breaches weren't making or breaking you in that deck. Yeah. So
and was that a huge? I mean, when Mox Opal came off the ban list, I saw people calling that from from a mile away. Like when you're playing a deck that strong, you got to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And so, it'll be interesting. What I really didn't like about the ban announcement is they said that they're going to wait until Standard rotates to make any type of change or any type of action as they see fit. And listen, these are the folks who they're testing the format as they're designing sets, right? And there would have been like an excuse for no action taken in the format when we were at that time period where sets weren't designed for a 3-year standard. Because remember, that didn't happen until Karlov Manor. That was the first set that they took into account a 3-year standard rotation. So designing cards with that in mind changes then. And so does your play testing to see how they interact with the older cards. And that mattered because you started to see cards in OTJ that would have helped deal with Shieldred the Apocalypse, given that 3-year standard rotation, right? Scorching Shot or whatever. Like cards that are specifically directed at Shieldred, which wasn't unbeatable, but, was very annoying to play against for quite some time until there were, a metagame that was shifting to get around that card. So if they decide to take action, I think what is June 30th? That's supposed to be an announcement or something like that.
That sounds right.
Because Standard won't rotate till September. Remember that. So even if they take action at the end of June, beginning of July, you still have 2 months of a Standard in which action is preemptively taking place against certain cards before a new set can be tested by players to determine if action needs to be taken. So that's how you know that play design knows that these cards are going to be a problem, or in their mind they think it's going to be a problem. Maybe Beans becomes determined that that card is too strong for Standard, given rotation plus what's coming in the next sets.
Mm-hmm.
That might negatively or positively impact this card, right? Domain won't have Zur anymore, for example, but that doesn't mean the Beanstalk becomes less powerful. And they said specifically, look at cards that have been banned in other formats, and it might be determined it's too strong for Standard. That should have happened a while ago when they banned it out of Modern, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If they were going to hit this card, it should have been a long time ago. I think we are very past the mode in which you would take action against this card, if that's their ideology. Now, Monstrous Rage, on the counterpoint, was determined that it was too strong for a 2-year Standard rotation plus Alchemy cards in that format on Arena, right? Because remember, Alchemy is a 2-year Standard with the Alchemy sets. And they thought that this card was too strong for that. And Alchemy has some ridiculous cards, right?
And they could rebalance this too, but they just said no. Like I don't know if it was a matter of not knowing like what to test and they didn't think it was worth it, or if they just didn't think they could keep kind of the essence of what this card is doing and make it fair. Like the perma trample, I think, is really kind of the issue. And it's like, well, the roll is the whole thing. But if it only gave the roll, that's probably not good enough. But like, you know, and so what's the, it's, so yeah, there was like, no, just
like,
let's just drop it.
This card would be more fair if it said +2/+0 end trample till end of turn, and then generate the roll that just gives it +1/+1, right?
Yeah, I mean,
this card would still be annoying to play against, but significantly more fair.
Definitely,
yeah, absolutely. Or if it, instead of the monster roll, it could give the wicked roll or the freaking sorcerer roll, whatever, like just something else. Yeah, or young hero roll, but like. But remember when that's a thing, by the way, guys. There's more than just this one roll.
That's true.
That's right.
There are a lot of them, actually. And for the record, it's not that Monstrous Rage isn't. It's not that it's impossible to play around, but it's very difficult to play around. I know for me, like Haywire Might is in against a lot of red decks specifically to deal with this. Like that is a goofy line, and I'm not even removing the creature in that case. And so it's just.
This card in particular invalidates blocking.
It does.
So
I completely agree with that point. Yeah, I know that's something that a lot of folks have
it makes you not want to block, and then when you don't block, you die to getting one-shotted. And then your block doesn't matter in any event.
Well, and the moment I heard that, because I know Brian Kibler made that point a couple weeks ago, and I think I'm sure other people have said it as well, and I definitely agree with it. And I think that's why we aren't seeing a green aggro deck right now, is because like right now we have some of the strongest green like 3 and 4 drops that Standard has ever seen, and they're all like stone unplayable in the current environment. And funnily enough, though, if the Monstrous Rage didn't invalidate blocking so hard, then all of a sudden people wouldn't need to run as much removal to deal with the mice. Yeah. And then maybe green would, green would be able to block, effectively themselves, which is usually how green beats red. Maybe we'd see other kinds of aggro decks step up, and that would be neat. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And go ahead, Ashless.
I was gonna say, that new dragon, the Dragon Archer. Maybe that's what pushes green to be a staple, because there are 1-mana fight and bite spells at instant speed.
This
has the vigilance death this has the death touch on a 1-mana plus vigilance. So you attack in, it's gonna stay up and ready, right? Your opponent's not gonna want to block it.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose their creature. That's 1 damage pushed. You can use a fight spell, clear out their larger Shield Rid or their Glissa or Screaming Nemesis kind of stinks, but Nemesis only takes 1 damage, but then it dies. You take a point. Oh no, but you cleared a nemesis, right? Like this
Ah,
might.
you know?
You
Ooh,
can play
okay.
this in the Fight Club deck.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm about to say, is Obliterator Fight Club finally back on the menu?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
The Fight Club deck is amazing against mono red of whatever
that's fair.
flavor.
Yeah,
It's okay, they can attack you, and here's my Obliterator, and if you attack or block my creature, you lose your board.
Well, and I'm thinking about the first thing. So Astros, as you were talking, I realized like, oh, this could wear Audacity really well, or
It could easily.
Sheltered by Ghosts on this would be pretty, a little frustrating to deal with. And then tail swipes and bite downs all of a sudden look really good.
I mean,
That's
you can run this you run this with Selesnya, Bright Glass Gear Hulk, and go tutor this up, right?
Yeah.
Dude. All right.
You can play Collector's Cage, make this a bit bigger, run your Sheltered by Ghost, right? You're exiling something now, you're buffing it up, you're tutoring this up.
Seems great.
I don't see the downside.
This is it. Like, dude, I'm so sold on this. Okay. It's so funny because we went from, man, I'm bummed that they power crept Ankle Biter to all of a sudden, is Dragon Sniper the hero we needed the whole time?
Maybe it is.
Maybe this is how we need to think of green all of a sudden. I love it.
I will say, so like, we haven't really talked about the third card that folks thought action should have been taken against, which was This Town Ain't Big Enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the more
let's get
think about it, I don't think that it needed action taken against it. And even though that was my original opinion, because I think the best card in Tarkir Dragonstorm is an uncommon called Sun Pearl Kirin. And
dude,
you want to talk about powerful uncommon. This particular card, it's a 1 and a white for a 2/1 flash flying. When this creature enters, return up to one other target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it was a token, draw a card. So let's talk about how your Storm Chaser's talent makes you an Otter token, and how this card also has flash, right? So if your opponent hops a creature in front of one of your Otter tokens and is able to go kill it, you can flash this creature in, bounce your Otter token that was going to die anyway, and draw a card. But wait, this card is insane with Hopeless Nightmare. So how they determine that this card is okay for Standard in a format that you could just play black-white and forget the blue and play Hopeless Nightmare don't make sense to me. Because now I have 8 pixies in white that will pick that card up. And they printed the black Dragonstorm card is 1 in a black. That just is when it enters, opponent loses 2, you gain 2. So now I have 8 drain enchantments that can be picked back up and put back down, plus Bandit's talent to make your opponent discard. That's also 2 mana. How they printed the Kirin and didn't take action on a Hopeless Nightmare doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with that.
It's funny you say that, and I think you're exactly right. Like, This Town Ain't Big Enough is a very powerful card alongside Storm Chaser's talent. It is. That is a legit, reasonably powerful engine. That loop costs 6 mana, and you get it once per turn. Like, yeah, it's kind of it's card neutral, so like it definitely is powerful when you're grinding. But something as simple as a well-timed disenchant can break that up. So I'm kind of with you on that. And you're right. The Kirin, that was the one out of the set where I remember looking at it for the first time and just going, Are you for real? We don't need a white flash pixie. We don't need that.
I wouldn't feel bad picking this card back up picking the Kirin back up with pixie, or if you go Esper and are playing the Fear of Isolation card or something to pick these up to just keep rotating the creatures because it helps you out against Wrath spells. And I didn't even mention Nowhere to Run or Momentum Breaker, which also only costs 2 mana.
And we even have Tiny Bones joints up as well at 1.
Yeah.
But let's say in that same breath, if they took action against Hopeless Nightmare and you still have Tiny Bones joins up, which is fair because it's legendary, right? Just picking that up and putting it back down is fine because you can't put multiple. And Hopeless Nightmare, remember too, also says pay 3 mana, sack it, and then when it goes away, you scry 2. So like that can help fix the top cards of your deck, and Tiny Bones Joins Up cannot do that.
Yeah. The biggest thing too with Tiny Bones is that it doesn't deal damage, whereas Hopeless Nightmare does drain your opponent for 2. And the number, I mean, how many times have we died to that recently?
Oh, so many.
So it's funny that this Tiny Big Enough gets targeted as like the problem, and I totally agree with you that Hopeless Nightmare is a key linchpin that is the finisher of that deck. If this were to disappear, the deck would still be able to do a lot of things, but it would have a hard time actually closing the game.
Yeah.
And so, like, that would be, Corroding Dragonstorm costing 2, and not forcing a discard, I think makes it, significantly more fair and tougher to execute than this. And so... Yeah, I think it's funny, if Hopeless Nightmare got hit, the Pixie deck would probably get hurt worse than if this town did, which is interesting. And it's funny, too, when we talk about Monstrous Rage, the other card that a lot of people mention there is Manifold Mouse. It's like, is Monstrous Rage the problem or is Manifold Mouse the problem? It's like, well, them coexisting is the problem. Let's be honest with that. But it's like, well, if you took action on one but not the other, like... which one do you hit? And I think Manifold Mouse would actually slow that deck down dramatically, because if the trampling thing didn't have double strike consistently, it would be dealing a lot less damage, So so I'm with you there that the package itself is all very powerful. So it's not it's tricky to identify one specific card that's the problem. It's funny, Beanstalk is the only one where I'm willing to acknowledge like that individual card is problematic in a way that these other ones that are these packages that become very, very powerful. Yeah. And slowing them down somewhere would be nice, I think, for us arena grinders. It would make the ladder a lot more fun, and if we could get some more variety injected in there. But yeah, what do you hit? And so so clearly Wizards looked at it and they saw so much happening that they just decided, well, let's just let it ride. And honestly, given that they're trying to inject faith and trust in paper Standard, I get it. Like that is in line with the philosophy that they've been espousing. So even though I personally would have liked to see, I want to see a shakeup, but that's not because I think something is unhealthy. It's because I'm not having fun on the ladder right now, and it'd be cool if something changed. That's all it is. And I'm hoping Dragonstorm injects something into the mix. Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing I really don't understand, I get not wanting to, that they don't have like emergency bans anymore. They say they don't until they eventually will need to do that, right? You take everything that you consider based on data, right? Where they don't necessarily look at the arena ladder. Arena ladder is only going to give them data on how many decks are being played, like what percentage. Yes, you can get win-loss records off of them, right? Because there's software that does this. But they generally aren't making decisions based on arena play outside of choosing to take action against Leyline of Resonance and Best of One.
Sure.
And it's interesting to me because right now we're going into modern RCQ season. There are 2 major Standard events coming up, and they aren't until the first 2 weeks of May. Right, okay. Which are the 2 regional championships for Standard. So obviously you're going to have 1,000+ players playing at those events. So are you telling me that you wanted to wait until after the regional championship tells you which decks are the most effective to possibly take action over a month and a half later after the conclusion of those events into what would be a separate format with the release of 2 different sets, right? Being Final Fantasy and then eventually Edge of Eternities. Because you wouldn't make bans in the middle of your regional championship qualifier season.
Definitely.
Yeah, no.
If they were gonna take action, in my opinion, it should have been now, because then you would have been able to get the data from those 2 regional championship events to make a determination later in June, when you had more hard data to look off of. That's why they took action in Modern now, because we're moving into a modern RCQ season that players didn't want full of Underworld Breach. Right?
Sure.
And they had the data to back it up. When we went to a regional championship in Charlotte, and there were 101 more Underworld Breach decks that were submitted into that event than the second most submitted deck, which was Orzhov Blink, and it had the highest conversion rate, not necessarily as a result of the deck submissions, but of how efficient the deck was. Right, 6 out of the top 8 of that tournament was Underworld Breach, and you take a look at the percentages, and the data was there. Take action against this card. So I'd want data to help me determine those decisions. Worst case scenario, they could have taken action against either one or all of those cards, looked at the data from the 2 upcoming standard RCs, and then they could have unbanned them if they didn't think it was going to be a problem. Right? Coming up. You have that flexibility when you have these scheduled ban announcements. You can just do whatever you want. And again, if it's going to be against cards that are uncommons as opposed to rares and mythics where it's not going to hurt the player's wallet, why not do it? Why not shake up the format? Because what's going to happen at the end of it is we got 2 standard RCQ seasons that come after the modern one. So in June 30th, right? April, May, all of June, when we hit July, we're going to have 2 standard RCQ seasons back to back, 6 months of standard in a row, which is fantastic. I love it. Thank you for that.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, why do I got to wait till before that RCQ season for action to be taken when you have the data or, I don't know, community outcry or whatever before that? Like I said, and this isn't me calling for bans or saying that there shouldn't be bans in Standard. I was of the opinion that there should be no bans in Standard. I clearly know what are problem cards in the format, or what people think are problem cards. The time to take action against said cards have passed. It makes no sense to do it in June, unless you tell me as R&D or play design that you have created cards that would exemplify those problem cards even further, because there are problems without more cards being in Standard. It's just very weird to me. Especially if you know in advance that those cards are going to be problems. You'd know that already from your play testing. So why not do it now versus later? Don't make sense.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, there is a specific timing, especially since, like you said, we're entering into a season of 6 months of this. People are prepping up their decks. They're getting things ready. The time for bannings would have already been, well and past.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's probably a safe assumption that we will not see any standard bannings until rotation. That is an assumption, because who knows what's going to happen between now and then. I can't predict the future, but yeah, I think don't count on it. Is probably a good thought here. Yeah, because I agree. It makes sense. So, yeah. And it's funny, though, because the other question is just, what is a healthy format? Because right now, we're talking about 3 different decks. We're talking about Red Deck, we're talking about Beanstalk, and we're talking about, the Pixies, and the various Pixie decks. Some of which are Dimir, funnily enough, that don't actually have a Pixie in them, but they still they feel the same. Those are 3 separate decks. We have 3 decks on top of the heap in Standard, and it's arguable which one is number 1. Yeah. That's a good thing, right? And so that feels like, that sounds like on paper what we want a healthy format to be. So why are we feeling this tension? Why are people calling for these? Is it just, I know for me, I just like it when Standard shifts a lot. We're at a point right now where we are deep into the 3-year rotation schedule. And I don't know about you guys, but as somebody who's playing just thousands of games on Arena each month, I'm just feeling it, it's feeling like Standard hasn't changed much in a meaningful way. I know it has. I know you can point to a lot of things that are different, but the general feel, like when I see Beanstalk drop across the field, I know the Overlord Xur package is completely different from the old school Domain Atraxa package, but playing against it feels exactly the same. I'm sorry, it just does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
it's like when you see your opponent play Lush Portico on the board, you already know what's happening here.
100%. Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know. It's just, I would like to see different approaches. I'd like to see different styles. And I know how much of that is personal feeling, how many people are experiencing that, and is that problem worth shaking everything up over? Wizards clearly thinks not. And honestly, I do respect that decision, even though the market they're catering to there is not me. That's okay. For the health of the game and for the health of the format, I don't feel confident that they made a bad choice, if that makes sense, even though it's not the choice I would have made. And so, yeah.
I would agree. I don't think it was a bad choice. It would have been nice if there was, but I mean, there's also the different environments, right? Like, we're speaking from an Arena standpoint. The decks we see on Arena are vastly different than the paper environment. When you talk about a paper environment, not everyone has like $200-$300 to burn on a standard deck. Even then, I think the domain deck's a little bit higher, because I've heard some of the standard decks are $500-$600, and that's like not a budget that's sustainable for, you know, the usual target audience of like 20 to 30-year-olds, and sometimes even teenagers, younger, like anyone coming to play in. That's expensive at any age, any deck you're trying to play. A standard deck, in my opinion, maybe $200-$300 at the very most if it's like a tier 1 rare some ethics. Different argument, different day. But we see on Arena, it's much easier to build a collection, much easier to play those top decks that are the tier 1. Whereas in paper, right, you probably don't run into that. You run into more homebrews. People just don't have that budget. So the diversity is different between standard in paper and standard on Arena. We have a great healthy standard. We do see some diversity on Arena, but we see less diversity because of the access of cards, which is great in a lot of ways, because, you know, you don't have to pay hundreds of dollars, but that is what happens to when you have access to all the cards. What are you going to play?
Yeah. But at the same time, though, like, I went to practically any RCQ weekend that I could go to over this last standard cycle. The metagame was very clearly present every time. I don't know that this is so much of an issue rather than like just an observation. But like standard, I'm talking about during like the SCG tour cycles, where you had the grinders that were traveling from event to event every weekend. They were out traveling literally 2 to 3 weekends a month. They were trying to win the opens, and if they placed within a certain place, whether that was top 16 or top 8, hopefully they were floating that money to the next event. To go to the next event, they were earning like SCG points, which would get you to the Players Championship, which had a lot more money. And then they started implementing Pro Tour invites to those tournaments. So like those are the places you wanted to be if you were the grinder. And then standard, because you had tournaments every single weekend on top of like your local store IAQs or invitational qualifiers, or your PTQs at the time, or PPTQs, whatever the name they wanted to be. You had data every weekend on the percentage of certain decks that were being played, and standard was a rock, paper, scissors format, where you were playing one deck to hedge against the other two, or where you had a favorable matchup against the other two top metagame decks. And every weekend, that rock, paper, scissors format changed, because folks were playing like tier 2 decks, but like three to 5 different ones, and that might make its impact to become one of those 3 pillars of standard the next week or the week after that. And all of that data was supplemented via Magic Online. So you saw people playing those top decks all the time. You saw that at your local game store. It also, you know, was a reason you didn't really see any homebrews, because that's just how competitive in nature that standard was at the time. When you take a look at standard now, in the revitalization of standard, again, this is just my opinion, you don't have that. You kind of have it in the sense that you know what the top 3 decks are, i.e. our discussion of the bans just now, Beanstalk decks, red decks with monstrous rage. This town ain't big enough to reflect the Esper decks, or the Pixie decks, or Talent Town decks, whatever you want to call them. Those are the top 3 decks of the format. But Arena is much different, and we don't have tournaments week to week. Yes, you have Magic Online results, right? You can look at standard challenges, you can look at standard leagues from Magic Online. That provides a great amount of data. And a lot of your stuff, Magic Online is always a week ahead of Arena. So what you see on Magic Online, you see the people take the deck list from there, import it into Arena, and give it a go. And then all of a sudden, like, a new deck pops up, right? Magic Online players are a week ahead of everybody, in my opinion. And the problem with now is you don't have pillars of the format in the sense of deck archetypes. And it wasn't until Pro Tour Aether Drift in Chicago that you saw blue-white control make a comeback. Remember how many weeks were we here on this podcast, Cam, and we were saying there is no control deck in this format.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
And so we're saying that Standard is healthy, but this element is missing. And then all of a sudden, Pro Tour, Eli Cassis, and their testing team come up with this blue-white control deck that's just like knocking stuff out of the park, right? I think that deck technically had the best conversion rate at Pro Tour Aether Drift because they were on it, right? Biza plus Overlord of the Hauntwoods, taking advantage of counterspells, stock up, absolutely insane. People didn't play stock up before that Pro Tour, right? We knew it was like a strong card, but it was that Pro Tour that exemplified that.
Mm-hmm.
But because of this now, right? So Control made its way, but Control's also now disappeared. It's gone. I don't see it on Arena anymore. Maybe it's because people just aren't playing it as much, and for the listener or viewer, you might see it a lot more than we do on the ladder, and that's totally valid. I think the Control deck's gone. It's moved on. You don't see it in Magic Online testing results a lot anymore either. And what it's created is a format that mid-range is no longer possible. It's ramp, aggro, or tempo. And so in this particular type of scenario in the Standard environment, your mid-range deck goes nowhere, right? Also take a look. Golgari was the best mid-range deck that you could play. Remember Dimir mid-range with Kaido? That initial iteration of the deck? I'm talking Scion, Flood Pits, Drowner, Fairy Mastermind. It's gone. The Dimir deck is kind of making a little bit of a comeback or trying to wedge its way in there. But Golgari, even though you might see it in Magic Online, it doesn't exist on Arena. And the win rate for that type of deck across the board is relatively low. Right, unless you're a player who plays, like if you're Misplaced Jinzer or Victor Carvalho on Magic Online, the ones who are playing the deck all the time, they're doing well with it. That's their bread and butter. They know what they're doing against all matchups. But the common Magic player isn't picking up that deck and necessarily doing well.
Yeah, I see the Golgari deck fairly often on the ladder because I haven't been up at the top tiers in the last few weeks, honestly. I have not spent that much time on the ladder. And in Platinum, like late in the month, you see the Golgari deck all the time. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as it used to, though. It just doesn't. Yeah.
It doesn't. And so I'm not saying that this is a problem with Standard, but if the goal is to revitalize competitive Standard to what it used to be, it can't exist yet. There's not a level of data that we can gather unless there starts being, and granted, we talked about this months ago, unless there starts being a resurgence of paper Magic Standard events that are out there. And RCQs can't count for that because you're talking about RCQs that are anywhere from 8 players to, 40 players or something like that, right? That's not good observance of the metagame. Yeah, we have Spotlight Series that exists, and there are thousands of players that came out the Spotlight Series. There's a couple hundred players that play in the events at the SCG cons that they have. That's great and all. But there's no strong tournament series like there used to be for that hard data. And so Standard, as a result, evolves slower. And it evolves slower, and folks get focused on what your top 3 decks of the metagame are to try to race the Arena ladder. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, definitely agreed on that. I think that's a great analogy. Like, without something to drive a factor of deck ingenuity from other outside sources, we're kind of in an area of, these are the cards we know that work. These are the cards that people play. These are the decks that do it. And they stick to that until something big shifts and changes. If it's in, like you mentioned, MTG online event, something that's posted out, like this Standard deck went 5-0 on a recent Standard challenge and beat out Domain. And if you hear beat Domain and the Pixie deck, that's something people are going to pick up on the ladder, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can brew anything that has a favorable matchup against 2 of those 3 pillars, you're going to have a great time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and just looking at the data, just because I want to look at it, right?
Oh, please.
April 5th, as of this recording, was yesterday. The deck that won the Standard Challenge, 63 players, was Dimir Talent Town, right? Storm Chaser's Talent, this town ain't big enough, Kaido.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? On this standard challenge before that, 66 players, April 4th. The winner was Dimir Talent Town.
Interesting.
Follow me. The challenge also on April 4th. There was a 64-player one. Winner was Dimir Midrange. Right?
Ooh.
Kaido deck, old school Dimir midrange. Shieldred exists there, right? So Kaido's still very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaido's great. Just, yeah.
And if you look at the top 8 of any of these particular challenges, they're pretty much all the same. Yes, they are a variety of Dimir decks, red decks, and Gruul, red decks, and some Azorius Omniscience. I always happen to see Azorius Omniscience in a lot of these things. That's it. Maybe some domain decks occasionally. But you're also talking 60-player events, 70-player events, which is good data, right? People are playing with this on a competitive level for actual prize with monetary value. As opposed to the arena ladder, right? If you take a look at Untapped results, that might favor, and I don't know what Untapped says at the moment, so forgive me, but it might favor the red decks, right? Where Gruul or Mono Red is at like the top, or it could be Pixie decks that are at the top. But you play way more games on Arena than you do anywhere else.
It's true, and the arena ladder is also a little tough because it varies depending on what ranks you're looking at, what time of day you're playing. Like the amount, it's kind of amazing how significant those changes are.
And in my opinion, you see more brews in Mythics than you see your top standard decks. You see your real grinders in Platinum and Diamond who are playing most of your metagame decks, and once you reach Mythic, you see people playing brews against the top 3 decks. I see that whole lot.
Like, Carlo, I don't think I could have said that better. That's something I've been an advocate for quite a while. The best brews and diversity of a metagame you're going to find is in the Mythic ranks. That's my favorite type to play. I will say I'm guilty, and I'll use it in quotations, of sometimes playing like a aggro deck for like 50 plus games just to get out of Plat or just to get out of Diamond, because the metagame in Mythic is so much better. The brews, what you play against, like the different stuff and interactions you run into. It's like the best place to play Magic. I love it.
Yep.
And maybe that's my problem because I haven't done that. I've been trying to climb the ladder with brews, and oh man, it is drudgery. It's freaking brutal. Yeah, and I gotta say, smashing my face against the platinum wall, trying to do something unique and get that elusive 60% win rate with it. Oh man, it's tough right now. Yeah. So coming soon, mono red aggro stream over on twitch.tv/AMX42.
Honestly, I'm an advocate for it. Like I've never been a fan of the platinum rank. I always find it's the worst rank for me to play in.
Oh, it's miserable.
Yes, there's a lot of diversity and stuff, but there's so much to go unaccounted for. So many different things that can just go wrong. Diamond, at least, you're on the cusp. There's a hopeful light at the end of the tunnel to hit to Mythic, but Mythic's this golden era. So like spending, 2 streams or 12, 14 hours to just get that grind out and then hit Mythic where you can just enjoy the rest of the month. I truly think it's worth it.
Actually, for me, when it comes my deck building philosophy, I've kind of tweaked a little bit. So in the past, I have been a staunch advocate for trying to avoid the best cards and try to find synergies that are powerful enough to compete with them when things are firing. I have accepted that the bounce package, the red rush package, and the beanstalk package are just so powerful that trying to avoid every element of all of them is kind of an exercise in futility. And I've accepted that I'm probably going to do something that you see in those decks in whatever I'm brewing, whether that's a This Town Ain't Big Enough talent package in like a mono blue deck, or a beanstalk package alongside 3 blind mice. Like, so I've been trying to kind of find those pieces and give them a little bit of a twist, which, by the way, 3 blind mice with Overlord of the Hauntwoods, oh my goodness, that is amazing. If you're not doing that, I highly recommend it, because the Everywhere token can get copied with the 3 blind mice, and Doppelgang on the 3. It does the thing. It does the thing, you guys. Anyway, that's a different story for another day. And that you can see on my channel, because that is my current ladder deck, and it's it still plays like the domain deck. It's still doing all the domain things, but it just with a little bit of a twist. So I've been finding those little twists are where I'm finding enjoyment right now, rather than trying to make something brand new out of whole cloth. Yeah.
Is 3 Blind Mice 3 mana?
Yes.
Yeah.
So hear me out. Slight divergence.
No, please fire away. What you got?
Doppelgang, play like Doppelgang in that, or go into like a Jeskai package. Play 3 Blind Mice with Shiko. Because Shiko copies 3 mana or less. I ran into this from Meowdic on the ladder. Meowdic did not use 3 Blind Mice, but Shiko got a Caretaker's Talent from the graveyard, and then Caretaker's Talent made a copy of itself, which triggered its draw, which then did it again. Then they were producing treasure tokens off of one other card, added in a Mondrak, and then just spun the wheels for like I think in the game I ended up playing against them, they had 38 Caretaker's Talents.
So
but
they get one token, they draw dead, right?
Yeah, so they did deck themselves. But
it was beautiful.
But they didn't lose, because what they played in that list was that Angel from Foundations.
Oh,
get out of here! You can't win. And they just continued to make infinite mana, and they hit me with an outrageous robbery for my entire deck library.
That is so absurd. All right, I'm here for it though. Rock on.
But 3 Blind Mice, 3 mana, Shiko. Yep. Like that's a cool way.
It's right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like that's a deck to me right there.
Yeah, so Shiko, Paragon of the Way, if you guys aren't familiar, it's a 4/5 for 5 with flying and vigilance. When it enters, you exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard, copy it, and then you cast a copy without paying its mana cost. And so because it's a copy of the spell, any permanents come in as tokens, which 3 Blind Mice, you have the infinite 3 Blind Mice right there because you had a 3 Blind Mice in the yard and a Shiko hidden. I actually built, so bringing it back to Tarkir, I got to say, Astros, well done. Thank you. This Shiko was a card that I played with quite a bit during the streamer event, and I just kept going back to it. Like, I just kept thinking of new things to do with it. And the brew that I did with this that will only ever work in a streamer event where people are experimenting and being a little slow and suboptimal. I did this with Vesuvan Duplimancy and a whole bunch of spells that target.
I love that.
Infinite Shikos. And then I also had like Artist Talent and Imodane's Recruiter in there, so I could just churn through and then just keep discarding spells that would target it. And then, it was very silly. And I got it to pop like once, and man, it was great. Don't try that at home, kids, because it's, that's not a good idea. But man, it was delightful. Yeah.
Actually, like, speaking of like the clones and copying, we got another clone in Tarkir. So I remember him. Yeah, because like Ham, you did that whole Gear Hulk deck with the clones and the copies of the Gear Hulk.
A number of folks were doing that, but yes, the Coldstone Gear Hulk with the Wax and Shape Thief and whatnot. Yeah, Naga Fleshcrafter 100% fits that. So we now have 12. You can put 12 4-mana clones in the Coldstone Gear Hulk deck. Is that going to be a thing now? Probably not, but it's going to be fun to try.
Yeah.
I mean, if 12's in a deck, like, if you run like your cycling stuff and getting that through, you only need 4 to hit the bin. That's not impossible to get.
No.
And then Gear Hulk just comes in. They're 5/4s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the thing now.
Maybe. It's a fun idea. I'm here for it.
I tell you, I did have the opportunity to play a cool Coldstone Gear Hulk deck with Mardu Siegebreaker that OKI Scoop submitted for me to play, and because also transparency for streamer events, I normally play viewer brews, and so they had submitted this deck with Siegebreaker, so Siegebreaker could go ahead and if you played a Coldstone Gear Hulk after, I'm sorry, it's a loop where you could exile the Coldstone Gear Hulk under this, get a Gear Hulk every turn, right? But if you play Gear Hulk and you have a Siegebreaker in your yard, you can reanimate it off of the Gear Hulk, and then this eats the Gear Hulk, and then you attack again, rinse and repeat. So a steady stream of reanimating things, and obviously you get to play like the Black Overlord, which helps mill you to be able to do things like this. And it was a very, very fun deck to play. Also, yeah, it's just rinse and repeat. I've been waiting for like a Cole Stoke Gear Hulk deck to like pop up, and I think this is prime territory for it.
I love it. Yeah, Mardu Siegebreaker, for folks who don't know, it is a 4/4 for 1 and Mardu, so 1 red, white, black, with Death Touch and Haste. And when this creature enters, you exile up to 1 target creature you control until this creature leaves the battlefield. So you O-ring one of your own guys. It reminds me of the, I believe it was Champion mechanic from Lorwyn. Anyway.
Yep.
Yes, Champion.
Whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent, create a tap token that's a copy of the exiled card attacking that opponent. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice those tokens. So this is basically, you're championing one of your creatures, but then when this swings, you're like myriading it, which it's just, yeah, the potential there. In 1v1, you definitely want some kind of creature that has a strong, enters the field trigger like the Gear Hulk or something like that to really make this worth it. But I mean, in Commander, my goodness, that's going to be delightful, right? But yeah, it's just it's also just a 4-mana 4/4 haste Death Touch. Like, I know by today's standards that's just on rate, but still, yeah, I think this is awesome. So yeah, very cool. Oh, good stuff. So, were there any other cards that you guys noticed either during pre-release or the streamer event that you wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap things up and bring it in for a landing?
There's one I can think of that I think is the most disgusting true drop we have access to.
Far away.
Voice of Plenty.
Oh, Voice of Victory?
Voice of Victory, I think it is. The 2-mana 1/3 with Mobilize 2.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
This thing's nuts. Yeah, this thing is... And I thought it was going to be good, but after seeing it during the streamer event, this thing is insane. Like, it is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a 1/3 for 1 and a white with Mobilize 2, and opponents can't cast spells during your turn.
And you might think, this creature dies to cut down. And it does, but on your turn. So if they cast Voice of Plenty on turn 2, you are not cutting down it at like instant speed. So that means you got to take the time out of your turn to try to destroy this creature. And the fact that it taps when you mobilize, you make 2/1/1s that get sacrificed. Sure, you think that would be a problem, but or not be as threatening. But this card works extremely well alongside of War Leader's Call, which means anything with mobilize pings you. And then those 1/1s that it creates are actually 2/2s that sure have to be sacrificed, but that surely works well with like when this creature dies effects that drain your opponent too. So like the Blood Witch from Foundations works really well alongside this, which means you can play this card in a Raise the Past deck if you really want. It works really well alongside of. First of all, we have Impact Tremors in Standard, so you could play that enchantment. But also there is Impact Tremors on a creature that is also in Tarkir. It's like a 1/3 or something like this, or a 1/4. Yeah. And it is Impact Tremors on a creature. So you have 8 Impact Tremors effects plus War Leader's Call, which gives you 12. So if you really want to go ham on that type of a theme, no pun intended, you can certainly do that.
Yeah. No, it's just... Yeah, everything you're just saying, yes, with the side of yes. I had another... there's another card in this set that I think is flying under a lot of radars that would work really nicely in that kind of a deck. And it is... The name is escaping me right now, but I need to get it right. It's a black card that's basically a 1-turn Skull Clamp. I'm trying to remember I'm blanking on the name, and I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, the instant, right?
Yes, Desperate Measures is what it's called. I was thinking it was something maneuver, but no, Desperate Measures is that instant for 1 black. Target creature gets +1/-1 until end of turn. When it dies under your control this turn, draw 2 cards. Mm-hmm. So this is a new twist on like Corrupted Conviction or Village Rites that I think is really interesting, because if you're in combat and you have a creature that has sizable toughness, like if, for example, you're sending the Voice of Victory in, and it's a 1/3, and your opponent manages to line up, say a 3/2 against it or something like that. And it was like, okay, normally this would kill my guy. Well, all of a sudden I can use Desperate Measures, and now all of a sudden what was a favorable block for you becomes a trade, and I draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or at most basic, it lets you attack with those 1/1 mobilized creatures, and then you just desperate measures it before you have to sack it, and it turns into a draw 2 cards effect for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're just, it's just Skull Climb, or, it's basically just a village rights at that point, which is fine. Like, nothing wrong with that.
It also kind of fits really nicely in that Rakdal's Fling deck, right? Because you can use this to trigger your prowess on the Slick Shot Show Off, get an extra +1, hit it with your Callous Sellsword Fling, and now suddenly you're drawing 2 cards to refill the hand that you were out of. So
Gross.
maybe that deck actually has a decent spot now with the draw 2 on it.
Yeah. So this is one that I think a lot of people aren't talking about it, but I played it in a couple of very aggressive setups, and I was really impressed with how it worked. So I think if you're creative with it, this I think will be a very playable utility card in the right shell. Also, there's nothing saying you have to target your own creature with it. If your opponent has some kind of X1, you're not going to draw the cards off it, but you can just kill their guy. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. If you just need to pick off a mouse, this can get you there. So, and it takes out Dragon Sniper, which who knows, maybe that'll be relevant.
Yeah.
We'll see. So yeah.
It does take out Dragon Sniper.
Awesome. Very cool, everybody. So yeah, this has been a cool conversation. Thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Any other final thoughts, or do we want to just go around the horn and let people know where they can find you and what you got going on?
Yeah.
Astralsflame.
Tarkir's awesome. I think we're excited.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm excited. I'm excited to play with Tarkir cards. I'm excited to play with my SpongeBob cards. They came in the mail. I get to play with SpongeBob.
Hey, let's go.
And yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
Heck yeah, man. So yeah, thank you, dear viewers, for tuning in. By the way, all 3 of us are streamers on Twitch. Our links are in the description alongside a lot of the other team members. Definitely go drop follows. We would appreciate it very, very much. If you like this, you're going to like that, because you can actually chat with us live while we're bantering like this and playing. It's a good time. But yeah, so Astrals, do you have anything coming up that you want the folks to know about?
Dragons are coming. I'm excited. This is my kind of standard.
Indeed. Love it. And Carlo. Oh, hey, that's enough. Yeah. Carlo, got anything going on, man?
Coming up, we have towards the end of this month, it is the weekend of April 25th and 27th. I'm going to be participating in a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. Nice. They are doing this thing called All Trolls Weekend. So like funny things that you can donate to make the streamers do. And it is MTG Arena based, so we'll get to raise some money for that great organization. And then the second week of May, I will be at SCG Hartford. It is one of the standard regional championships. I'm not qualified, but I'm going to go play in LCQs on Friday because it's only like a 4-hour drive from my house. So we're going to be heading over there. And yeah, that's pretty much what we got coming up until Vegas in June.
Heck yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm planning on being there in Vegas. It's going to be fun. And I also just recently upgraded my fellow Thar the Steadfast pre-con with a ton of nasty stuff, which I'm going to be showing off on Generic Commander here in the which is a show that I suck at plugging, but I'm just going to mention it here. If you want to watch me play Commander with some cool dudes, Generic Commander on YouTube. And then Twitch every Monday through Friday, per usual. So yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. And thank you, dear viewers, dear listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you. It's awesome. We should probably, this is where we would think of a question of the week, but I'm not professional, so I'm not prepared. So, yeah, I guess we're just going to end it here.
What's your favorite dragon and why?
Ooh, Astro's over here with the coming in hot. Okay, cool. So, Carla, do you have an answer, or do you want...
My favorite dragon to play, least from my experience in this weekend, was Ureni. Because Ureni did a lot of removing and a lot of not dying.
So much not dying. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Ureni the song unending. Yeah.
That's right.
I think that is a perfectly fine answer. Not gonna lie. For me, it's funny. My favorite dragon right now of all time has got to be Teneb the Harvester. I love this card. It's Obzon colors. It's my go-to commander. And funnily enough, this is the mascot for a deck that my favorite commander deck of all time. I almost never actually cast the card. Like, Teneb is the commander, but like I could just put any Abzan commander and the deck would play exactly the same. It's just Reanimator nonsense. And so I'm just, I don't know. But at this point, it's tradition. I need to keep Teneb in the spot. So Astros, how about you? How do you pick just one for your favorite dragon?
For me, it's Dragon Tyrant. It will always be Dragon Tyrant. That was the first dragon I ever got. And it's just been a big beast of a 6/6 double striker with the old text of you have to have and pay 4 mana and upkeep. But it was forever will live in my heart.
All right.
And okay, Dragon Tyrant, 6/6 for 10 with flying trample, upkeep of 4 red, and double strike. Okay, I often talk about how Manifold Mouse is ridiculous by giving permanent double strike on a 2-drop. This is what we used to have to pay for double strike. All right, guys?
Honestly.
You kids don't know how good you've got it these days.
Seriously. I mean, I would cheat this in anyway. Zerillion of the Claw made me pay 2 mana for this anyways. So, I mean, really, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Dude, amazing. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. This has been an absolute delight. Let's do this again sometime. And yeah,
definitely.
Thank you, dear viewer, again. We'll catch you on the next one, everybody. Take it easy. Later.
Later.